Chapter 1, In the beginning there was the chef. Gastronomical experiences and thoughts of a chef. Or, what makes life in the kitchen so special? Or, without the work of the chefs, mankind would never have left the cave. The founding of the profession of cooks, grillers, and roasters. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Then the people. Later the chef, who discovered the fire. So he started cooking. Creation teaches that God created everything, while evolution teaches that all living things evolved through ongoing genetic adaptation. However, arisen or created, the first man was a chef. Or to put it another way, a talented, bright Neanderthal, with excellent powers of observation. He observed the first scientific observations, and developed the special ability to convert simple observations into meaningful, practical, and long-term useful actions that are definitely suitable for everyday use. Let's call this Neanderthal Lorenz the doer, or Lenz for short. Lenz or Lorenz is the German short form of Laurentius, and Laurentius is the patron saint of chefs. Yes. And so, Lenz is here. The first chef. So he started cooking. That was somewhere between Stone Age and Jerusalem. From these prehistoric times there is very little reliable material and data on the everyday life of this early population. We know, because nobody could read at that time, and of course nobody could really write either. Except, of course, for the few chefs, like Lenz, who only appear very sporadically. They have written down the first traces and evidence, and left them on the cave walls, so to speak. From these writings and paintings we can still read what has happened at that time. The primeval hunter and gatherers, as well as the Aborigines in Australia, have left little usable traces of higher intelligence, apart from cave paintings and a few petrified simple tools. Until at some point fate, or evolution, brought forth a chef, and thus mankind was finally bestowed with Lenz the first chef. Today we can only speculate about when, where, and how. However, there are some clues as to how Lenz the chef managed to elevate Neanderthals from hunter and gatherers to Homo sapiens. Thinking man was only able to evolve from primates because of the discoveries of the first chef. He revolutionized foraging and eating forever. And here are the events, in chronological order. Perhaps mankind's first dish was an ostrich, roasted during a bushfire in Africa. And that's exactly what happened. As always, Lenz and his tribe are in search of food. The day after a devastating fire, Lenz found a large bird on the burnt steppe. Desperate because he couldn't find any other food, he dragged the burnt ostrich, or rather, the first roast chicken, to his camp. Driven by hunger, the first Neanderthals began to eat the meat. Only Gusto, a friend of Lenz, wrinkled his nose a little, and said briefly, "There's no aroma." Lenz saw a challenge and remembered a nearby burnt bush full of charred peppers. He stripped the pods of the black skin and crushed them with some basil in mortar and pestle. The first pesto is born. Gusto dunked a bit of ostrich thigh into the pesto, and tasted it skeptically. "Very, very tasty," said Gusto, who from then on became known as the first restaurant critic. Gusto the gourmet immediately also noticed the subtle difference between raw and fried meat. He spoke to Lenz about it right away, but didn't know why it tasted so different. Restaurant critics never know that, but it doesn't matter. Lenz, however, thought about it, and asked himself why. The word why was born and has brought about many, if not all, of the achievements of mankind from that day forward. Before there was no why, just eat or starve, but now the next step for humanity, Lenz recognized the importance of why. Why did the bushfire change the meat, and why did Gusto found it to taste better, and enhanced? The fire destroyed everything, but the fire also produced what we will later call roasting and grilling. Lenz and Gusto are the secret pioneers of good taste. After the meal, and a short discussion, the two set off, and Lentz showed Gusto where he had found the roast bird. When they got there, they found some residual embers in an old, charred tree trunk. Gusto poked around a bit, and broke off some glowing charcoal, and proudly brought it to the camp in a skullcap. Lentz lit a controlled fire and immediately began to cook. Or rather, to grill. At this point we also clear up another misconception. The newly fashionable, hibachi grill, is not a Japanese invention, but the original hibachi has been invented as followed. Incidentally, the skullcap of a rhinoceros, which Gusto found the day before, was stuck in the loamy soil of the burned steppe, and was of course baked to the skullcap by the heat of the bush fire. And once in the camp, the clay layer hardened even more, and formed a beautiful fireproof terracotta layer. The hot charcoal soon burns the bony skullcap, leaving behind the first fire-burned, heat-reflecting hibachi grill. Therefore Lentz the first chef invents the first hibachi grill. Filled with pride and joy, Lentz sits there with Gusto at the first hibachi grill, fire, kindled in a solid rhinoceros skullcap. They lamented for a while until Lentz said impatiently, "Now let's go and get something to cook." Realizing that the grill is hot now, he knew immediately that there was no time to waste, and now is better than later, and he concluded that time management should play a crucial role in the kitchen of the future. Rule number 1 is, in a kitchen is a lot of now and only a little later. Chapter 2, the chef discovers salt pickling and smoking.